York's classic rock, Q1043.
One of the greatest photographers on the planet Earth, Lynn Goldsmith, is here with us at Q104.3. I've been following her adventures on Facebook these past few days. She's been in Europe. Were you having like lunch with Patti Smith in Norway?
Yes, in Oslo.
In Oslo. Did she just fly over to hang out with you, or was she already there, or what was going on?
I was already there because I had a show in Trondheim, Norway, in a museum called Rockheim. And our paths crossed because Patti is doing a tour of many of those points. But she did arrive in Oslo a day before her show, which is tonight and tomorrow night in Oslo.
Well, you were just there. I mean, didn't you just get off the airplane and ride your bicycle here?
How are you functioning? I function on rock and roll energy. You walk in and see you two and then hear that music playing, and I'm wide awake now.
When did you get back?
I got back see my time frame. I got back yesterday. Yeah.
Wow.
But it would have been yesterday night for me.
Yeah, so just to bring people up to date, in case you're not familiar with our friend Lynn. Lynn has had just an extraordinarily complicated career. Lynn,
but fortunate.
Yes.
I'm very grateful.
Lynn was, at one time, the manager of Grand Funk Railroad, a television producer and director. She directed the In Concert series on ABC television network in the early 1970s, which was a groundbreaking music series that also, for the first time on a national basis, had a television show you could watch while you could tune into your local FM station and hear the music in stereo. This was a big step forward in technology in 1972 or 3, right?
Yes, that's right.
And also an extraordinary photographer. They're coffee table books. I don't know if artists like to hear them referred to as such, but that's what they are.
No, it's a coffee table book.
They're
yes.
big and they're beautiful.
Beautiful.
And just, great paper and binding and all of that. And she does shows all over the world. And she's had even some that have been controversial, like the one in Nashville at the Parthenon. There is, by the way, a Parthenon in Nashville. I know it's confusing, but it's beautiful. It's like the one in Greece.
It's a replica.
It's in Nashville. Yeah, it's a total replica.
It's a total replica.
No,
with
complete.
a great
barbecue
including
restaurant.
the Athena,
Right.
who is 40 feet tall.
Right.
And
so you had an exhibition of your photography there that created some difficulties.
Yes, because that body of work was self-portraits. And the idea behind it was that you could be anything,
Right.
which is, I think, the belief system I've carried around my whole life that has allowed me to do much of what you've said.
Right, but there was the whole cultural appropriation
Oh,
thing.
yeah. Because I made myself African American, I made myself Asian, and even though the work was done between 2000 and 2010, before the term cultural appropriation became this saying that got people to lose their jobs and other really sad things, before the power of social networks. And people who could voice themselves that didn't necessarily educate themselves into why someone did something and what they were really saying. There was just this very negative approach to thinking that there's them and us. And what I was doing with my work was saying we're all one.
And you also, in some of your self-portraiture, is that a word?
Yes.
You put yourself into like fantasy land, fairy tale stuff.
Yes. It's
as
called
well.
The Looking Glass.
Yes, yes.
I'm Alice in Wonderland.
Right. Has the Carroll estate come after you?
No, not at all.
Lewis Carroll's estate hasn't
just
come
wait.
after you.
Maybe because I'm not blonde. Maybe this is where my white hair saves me. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I just got a message from somebody that said, Lynn has spectacular photos.
Oh, well, thank you. Who is somebody?
Uh,
Do they-
this this is a listener, uh, Lolly DeWitt.
Lolly, thank you.
Lynn has spectacular photos, and you do have spectacular photos. And one of your spectacular photos became the source of a great deal of controversy, going all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, where there was a 7-2 decision in your favor.
And you were like on the front page of every newspaper.
Yes, and on television shows in terms of not me, but the decision.
Right. Well, they had a New York Times opinion piece that said the Supreme Court got it wrong.
Well, that piece was written by someone who, which I was very disappointed the New York Times did not put at the top of the article. He's written 2 books, and one of them with the foundation, the Andy Warhol Foundation, which was the party that sued me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard, though I don't know that it's accurate, that he also got a grant from the Warhol Foundation. So he's free to say and
Right.
get his
Everybody's
facts wrong.
free to say what they
but,
want.
But I think the New York Times should make it clear when someone is
they also
biased.
they also could have reached out to you.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
could have done that. But if you could just summarize briefly, because this was
A big case.
a David versus Goliath case. This is a huge, huge copyright case that will have massive implications for artistic creators in the United States
Yes.
forever.
Yeah. Actually, the night after, while I was in Norway, the Music Publishers Association had some big event in New York. And I got a text from someone who was there saying they spoke about you for an hour. Yes, the reason I risked everything I have was first of all, I had to because they were suing me. But the real reason was I wanted to make sure, as best I could, that the copyright law would be one to protect all artists. We're talking about musicians, painters, not just photographers. It's just that taking photography today, because of the internet, is such an easy thing to do and to, put it on T-shirts and other things. It's not only infringing the rights of the person who created it, but it's infringing the rights of the celebrity. Who, as a photographer who's been able to have the opportunity to work with some of the biggest music icons, much less people in other areas.
Well, in many cases, they sought you out.
But
because they
explain
knew your
explain
work.
what the basic case was, because people are
Yeah,
not
could you just
necessarily familiar with
Summarize
the
it
photo.
briefly. You had
Okay.
your picture
Yeah.
of
In
Prince.
1981, I made a studio portrait of Prince. And that was on an assignment for Newsweek magazine. When you work for a magazine, you own the copyright to your pictures. And this was a copyrighted picture. In 1984, Vanity Fair called and asked to see whatever Prince Pictures, the agency that was licensing my photos, which happened to be an agency I owned, LGI. We represented about 300 photographers, and that was common practice because magazines like Time, Newsweek, Esquire, there was no internet for an artist to be able to reference pictures, and they never told you who the artist was going to be, but you gave a license to use it, and the rate is based on what rights are there. And so in this situation, it was licensed in 1984 for one-time use in a print publication by an artist for illustration with my credit.
Right.
And that license was paid for. It was $400.
Right.
And that was common in those days. So anyway, we're talking decades later now. Prince passes on, and I see the commemorative issue of Vanity Fair, and I look at it and I think, that's really familiar looking. And I looked in my files because I never forget someone's eyes. I forget a lot of things, especially as I get older, but names, but I don't forget the look of the people that I've photographed. And so I looked through my files and I found the picture and I put it in Google Images and I saw the Vanity Fair piece with my license there. So I figured, well, Andy was the illustrator. But I never knew that. And I did not know that Andy had made a number of drawings, silk screens, paintings of this particular quote-unquote illustration. And so I called up the foundation and I said, and this is what I do whenever I see a usage of my work. I basically say, I've discovered this. Here's the original invoice. Here's the original picture. And I'd like to talk to you about it. Period. And then we go from there. And then the Warhol Foundation came back to me and asked me what it was I wanted. And I said, I wouldn't know what I want because I have no idea how many licenses or what you've done with it. So why don't you put that list together? I'm not in any hurry and I can come in and we'll talk about it. And the next step was that they filed in federal district court in New York what's called a preemptive lawsuit against me.
Wow.
Well, it's a very smart the world now is corporations. It affects our healthcare. It affects our music. It affects everything. And one of the potentials for anyone with deep pockets or for corporations is to sue people and frighten them into giving up rights.
Yeah, but you weren't frightened.
Well, I was, but
well, it cost you $2 million, from what I read. You had to get a mortgage on your home because who has that kind of, well, the foundation does, but you fought it all the way because this was your work. It was your photo. It was appropriated. Color was added to it.
Well, there were no color. If you look at the documents, which are all online, 4 out of the 16 were just black and white line drawings,
right,
almost looking like tracings.
But some of them, had
the
some
normal,
color on
like
it.
Warhol pop colors.
Yeah, and from what I understand, all you were really looking for was a license fee and credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if they wanted to give me more money, I'm happy.
Right,
to...
but let me just summarize this for just a second, because I know you're very close to it. But I've read. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I've read a lot about your case. The Andy Warhol Foundation, with your work that you created, ended up becoming a competitor of yours because you license your art to publications to publish for a fee. And they took your art and licensed it to a publication, Vanity Fair, for a fee. Your fee was $400 with the original photograph. Their fee was 5 figures. And so this was really an inequitable situation. You fought it. You fought it all the way to the Supreme Court, and you won 7-2. Lynn just said, Steve Miller is how I met my husband. Is that a story you can tell?
Yeah, I think when he wrote Take the Money and Run, it was meant for me. No, I'm just kidding. Steve and his wife at the time, Kim, were very good friends of mine, and I would visit them in Sun Valley to go skiing in the winter and stay with them at Christmas. And Sid was the person that lived not only next door to Steve, but the person who built his recording studio, his home, his art studio. And so that was how I met Sid, thanks to Steve Miller.
He's an architect?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Not Steve. Well, Steve likes
No, I mean, you said Sid built the studio, built the house.
Yeah. Well, yes, he designed and built. And I have to say that Steve is also quite an amazing artist when it comes to drawing for three-dimensional objects, and they worked together a lot, so they were really good friends.
What a weird morning of coincidences.
I know.
So I just played the Steve Miller Band, and that's who introduced her to her husband?
Because
I
that
had no
was so
idea.
random.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, but I'm going to share one
And
little
early
story.
this morning, we played Grand Funk and Patti Smith. And
So I know Steve pretty well. And when Sid and I started getting more serious with each other, Steve took him out to lunch and said, "You don't want to be with that girl.
Why?
She leaves a trail of blood."
Kind
And
of sounds like you
wait.
talking about me, Jim.
So Sid came home and told me this, and I burst into laughter because how Steve is he didn't want to lose his friend. He knew I wasn't going to move to Sun Valley and that Sid would leave and that I probably wouldn't visit anymore. Steve's very smart.
Yeah, but without going into any details, I happen to know for a fact.
I didn't leave a trail
No,
of blood.
firsthand knowledge, but you left some broken hearts on the road. You did. It happens. It's okay. That's kind of a normal thing. It happens,
I
right,
just
Shelley?
wasn't ready for a relationship.
Okay, Lynn Goldsmith, where can our friends buy your books? Where can they see your artwork?
Oh, well, they can see my artwork on www.rockandrollphotogallery.com, which is a gallery that I own. And they sell my prints and the prints of other fine art, limited edition prints of other photographers. And then, of course, my website, which is lyngoldsmith.com. But really, if you're focused on music and rock and roll Photo Gallery would be the site to find most of it. My books, whether it's Amazon, I have a new book out, Music in the 80s, which is the basis for the museum show I just had in Trondheim. Let me see my books. Oh, and I love having followers. So please follow me on Instagram at Lynn Goldsmith, because publishers nowadays, and the one thing I always wanted to do all my life is make books. They don't even look at the content. They look at how many followers you have.
Sounds familiar,
Yes,
right,
it
Jim?
does.
It's so shocking to me. So follow me.
Okay, Lynn, thank you so much.
New York's classic rock, Q1043.